They say weddings are supposed to be magical, full of promises, laughter, and love. Mine was silent. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, but the kind that suffocates. A silence heavy enough to crush every piece of hope I had left. The grand hall of the Blackwood estate shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Cameras flashed. Polished laughter echoed. Two of the most powerful families in the city smiled for the world. I stood there in a tailored white suit that probably cost more than my car, looking like the happiest man alive. But inside I was breaking. I tried to refuse, of course, but my mother's pleading eyes and the stark reality of our family's bankrupt company left me with no real choice. In the end, I agreed. Alexander Blackwood stood beside me. Tall, perfect, intimidating. His face was an unreadable mask. He didn't even glance my way. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on some distant point ahead. To him, I wasn't a husband. I was a deal. A signature that sealed an alliance between Carter Group and Blackwood Enterprises. The hall smelled of white roses and expensive champagne. Everyone was smiling. Everyone except him. His father's voice cut through the murmurs. "Let's begin." The priest started speaking, but everything around me blurred into a haze of light and sound until I heard him say, "Do you, Alexander, take Carl?" Alexander exhaled. A slow, measured sound. "Yes." His voice was flat, cold, completely devoid of emotion. Just yes. My heart stumbled. When it was my turn, I whispered, "I do." Our voices didn't match. Mine trembled. His didn't waver. We sat, pretending this was love. The photographers kept flashing their lights. We smiled because the world needed pictures of happiness. Then he leaned slightly closer, his voice a low, sharp whisper meant only for me. "Don't expect me to play the husband. I didn't choose this. My family forced me. You're marrying my family, Carl, not me." My fingers froze around the bouquet. A shiver ran through me. I turned my head a little, forcing a smile for the guests. But inside, I felt something small and fragile shatter. The ceremony ended in applause that sounded like thunder. Everyone clapped. Mothers crying, businessmen shaking hands, cameras flashing in blinding waves of white. And him, Alexander. He just buttoned his jacket, looked straight ahead, and walked away. Not even a glance in my direction. I stood there, smiling for everyone because that's what a Carter was supposed to do. Smile through humiliation. My mother patted my hand gently, whispering, "It's okay, darling. It's just nerves." But it wasn't nerves, it was the truth. He didn't want this. He didn't want me. After the photos and the fake toasts, I finally found him outside near the car. He was leaning against the black Bentley, one hand in his pocket, phone to his ear. His expression was calm, distant, like he was already somewhere else. When he noticed me approaching, he hung up without a word. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice flat. "Yes," I said quietly. He opened the car door, stepped in, and gestured toward the seat beside him. Not even a hand to help me with the heavy suit or the bouquet. The driver closed the door, and we drove through the city, tall buildings glowing in the distance. The silence between us felt louder than the traffic outside. I stole a glance at him, his jawline sharp, his fingers tapping a slow rhythm against the leather seat, his eyes fixed on the window. He looked like someone trapped in his own thoughts, or maybe someone trying to escape them. I finally gathered the courage to speak. "You didn't have to say yes if you didn't want to." He didn't even turn to look at me. "My family made the decision. I didn't have a choice." "So you're angry at them?" I said quietly. "I'm angry that they thought this would fix anything." He looked at me now, his eyes cold. "Let's get one thing clear, Carl. Whatever this is, it's business. Don't confuse it with love." The words cut deeper than I expected. I stared out the window, watching the rain slide down the glass, pretending it was just the weather and not the tears I was fighting to hide. The rest of the drive stayed silent. The city lights stretched endlessly. People living, laughing, falling in love, while I sat beside a man who was promised to me but already gone. When we finally stopped, the driver stepped out and opened the door. A gust of cold air hit my face as I stepped onto the pavement. We were standing in front of his penthouse tower, a monolith of glass and steel, reaching up into the clouds. He walked ahead without waiting for me. I followed quietly, the sound of my footsteps echoing behind his. Inside the elevator, our reflection stared back at us from the mirrored walls, a picture-perfect couple. Except we weren't. He pressed the button for the top floor. The ride-up was quiet, just the faint hum of the elevator. I tried to say something, anything, to break the tension. "It's beautiful," I said softly. He glanced at me briefly. "It's practical." I smiled weakly. "You mean cold?" His lips twitched, not quite a smile. "You'll get used to it." When the doors opened, I understood what he meant. The penthouse was massive, expansive marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a skyline view that could steal your breath. Everything felt expensive, lifeless, perfect. Like him. He walked to the counter, set down his keys, and finally spoke. "You'll stay in the guest room. It's down the hall, second door on the right." I nodded. "Okay." He didn't ask if I liked it. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He shrugged off his jacket, grabbed a tumbler from the bar, and poured himself a generous measure of whiskey. "This arrangement," he said, turning toward me, "stays professional. You live your life. I live mine. Don't expect more than that." My heart ached, but I kept my tone even. I wasn't expecting anything. He tilted his head slightly, as if he didn't believe me, then took a slow sip. "Good." The night after the wedding felt endless. I woke before sunrise. The city outside was already alive. Cars moving, sirens wailing somewhere in the distance. But this place, this glass penthouse, was frozen. Alexander was nowhere to be seen. His side of the apartment looked untouched, perfect, like no one lived there. The breakfast table held a single note, his handwriting sharp and cold. "There's a driver downstairs if you need to go anywhere. Don't call me." I sat there, staring at the note for a long time, the smell of coffee in the air but no warmth to be found. A few days passed and we fell into a rhythm, or maybe it wasn't a rhythm, just a pattern of distance. He came home late. I'd hear the elevator open, his footsteps, the low murmur of his phone conversations, the short, clipped tone he used with people he actually wanted to talk to. Then his door would close. Always his door. We ate at the same table sometimes. He'd scroll through his phone, ignoring me completely. When I tried to ask about dinner plans or family calls, he'd answer without looking up. "Don't act like this is a real marriage, Carl," he'd say, his voice flat and calm, as if he was giving instructions in a board meeting. "You got what your family wanted. So did I." I would just nod, but inside something twisted. I never asked for this. One evening, he walked in with a woman, tall, her sharp heels clicking against the marble. Her perfume hit the air before she even said a word. "Vanessa," she said, smiling at me like she was introducing herself to a waiter. Her eyes scanned the place, then landed on him. "So, this is your arrangement?" Alexander didn't answer. He just set down his jacket and finally said, "Don't make it sound dramatic. He knows what this is." Vanessa laughed, the sound bright and fake. "Good, because I plan to visit often." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, pretending I didn't hear the word visit. I left them there and walked to my room, the sound of her laughter chasing me down the hall. Her heels clicked against the floor, closer, softer, until their voices faded behind the closed door of Alexander's bedroom. Then, from my room, I heard them, talking, laughing, then silence, then the soft, rhythmic sounds of something I wish I could unhear. I pulled the pillow close to my chest, pressed it against my ears, but the sound still seeped through. My body shook. Not from anger, but from the pain of realizing I wasn't even a shadow in this house. When it was finally over, her voice pierced the quiet again, light, satisfied. "You're still tense," she said. "You sure this whole fake marriage thing won't mess with you?" He laughed, that low, cruel laugh he never used with me. "It won't. I don't even see him, and maybe he didn't, but I saw him everywhere. In every cup he left on the counter, in every half-folded shirt on the chair, in every sound that broke the silence. Hours passed. The lights from the city danced across the walls like ghosts. Somewhere beyond that door, he was living a life that didn't include me. And there I was, his husband, sitting alone in the dark, trying not to fall apart. When the silence finally felt absolute, I couldn't tell if it was because they had stopped or because I had gone numb. Morning came too soon. The scent of coffee filled the air, and he was already at the table, reading the newspaper, looking as calm and composed as if last night had never happened. I took a deep breath and approached quietly. "Good morning," I said, forcing a small smile. He didn't look up from his paper. "You don't have to greet me every day. I'm just trying to be polite. It's unnecessary." He folded the paper with a sharp rustle, stood, and buttoned his jacket. "We're not a real couple, Carl. Don't make this harder than it already is." He walked past me, and a faint trace of her perfume, mixed with his cologne, lingered in the air. The door closed behind him, leaving me in the suffocating silence once more. I looked down at the untouched breakfast setting, my hands trembling slightly. My throat burned with unshed tears, but I didn't let them fall this time. I just whispered to the empty room, "I'm not giving them the satisfaction." Then I turned to the window. The city stretched out below me, alive, beautiful, free, and I wondered what it would feel like to truly breathe again. A week later, at a family dinner with both our parents celebrating the happy alliance, he played the role perfectly. His arm was around me, a smile on his face that looked expensive but empty. My mother's eyes shone with pride. His father kept nodding, pleased. At one point, his mother said, "You two look good together. I'm sure you're settling in nicely." Alexander smiled. "Of course, Carl's adjusting." Everyone laughed politely, not realizing how sharp those words were. After dinner, when we were finally alone, I asked quietly, "Why do you hate me this much? I didn't force you into this." He looked at me, his eyes like glass. "I don't hate you, Carl. Hate requires energy. I just don't care." Then he walked away again, and I stayed standing there, pretending it didn't break me every single time. To the outside world, we were the perfect newlyweds. My family commented how much happier I looked lately. His family praised the flourishing business alliance. No one realized we were just two strangers sharing an address, occupants of a house too vast for anything resembling love. My days fell into a pattern of quiet servitude. Each morning, I prepared his coffee exactly how he preferred it. Dark roast, no sugar, a single shot of vanilla syrup. He never touched it. I left polite notes about upcoming family dinners or charity galas. He never acknowledged them. I told myself this was fine, that I was growing accustomed to the silence. But I wasn't acclimating. I was simply perfecting the art of stillness. The confrontation arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. I returned home early from the office, the elevator doors sliding open to reveal a scene that stole the breath from my lungs. Vanessa lounged on our sofa, a wine glass dangling from her fingers. Alexander sat beside her, his jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, a picture of domestic intimacy that had never included me. I stood frozen in the hallway, my throat tight. She noticed me first. "Oh, look," she purred, her smile sweet and venomous. "The husband is home." Alexander didn't bother glancing up. She laughed, the sound like shattering crystal. Only then did his eyes lift to meet mine, cold and impenetrable. "Since when do you not knock before entering?" "This is my home too," I said, my voice barely audible. His lips curved in a humorless smirk. "Is it now?" Before I could respond, Vanessa rose, brushing past me so close her perfume invaded my space. "Don't worry, Carl," she whispered near my ear. "He'll come around eventually. Or perhaps he won't." The elevator swallowed her, leaving us in a silence that felt heavier than before. "Was that really necessary?" I asked, my composure fraying. "You could have stayed out longer," he replied, unmoved. "You bring her here knowing I'd be home. What exactly are you trying to make me feel, Alexander?" He stood slowly, his height suddenly imposing. I instinctively stepped back. "I'm not trying to make you feel anything. he said, his tone flat and final. You're the one insisting on pretending this arrangement is something it's not. This was a business deal, Carl. You knew the terms. My control finally splintered. I didn't know the terms included listening to you love someone else in the next room. He turned away sharply. Then stopped listening. Something fractured inside me then. Not loudly, but deeply. A quiet breaking that only I could hear. The next morning, I found him by the floor-to-ceiling windows, sunlight carving his profile in gold. For a fleeting moment he looked different, softer, almost approachable. Human. Then he noticed me, and the walls slammed back into place. You're still here? He asked, not bothering to mask his annoyance. Where else would I go? The words emerged softer than I intended. He shrugged, a dismissive gesture that hurt more than any insult. I don't care. Just don't complicate this. In that moment, I understood the truth with painful clarity. It wasn't that he couldn't care. He simply refused to. That night, I stood alone on the balcony. The city's vibrant pulse a stark contrast to the stillness within me. Through the glass, I watched him in his study. Sleeves rolled up, focused on work, completely absorbed in a world that excluded me. He never noticed my observation. He never saw me at all. I hadn't asked for his love. But I desperately wished he would stop treating me as if I were invisible. The Blackwood Carter Gala arrived the following week, a glittering celebration of our successful union. Champagne flowed in endless streams, crystal chandeliers scattered light like diamonds, and cameras flashed, capturing every carefully constructed moment. I wore a tailored black suit, my hands trembling within my pockets. My mother adjusted my tie before we entered, her whisper a familiar warning. Smile, darling. Remember, they only see what we show them. I nodded. They saw nothing, and part of me preferred it that way. Alexander made his entrance with flawless timing, every inch the powerful air. The crowd parted for him, captivated by his charm and confidence. He moved through the room with practiced ease, shaking hands, charming investors, dazzling the press with his polished smiles. To everyone else, we were the ideal couple, but I saw the truth others missed. Beneath the impeccable exterior, his eyes remained distant, cold. The arrogance still lived there, carefully concealed, but very much alive. Vanessa found me near the balcony, her presence as subtle as a knife. Enjoying the performance? She asked, her voice a blend of silk and steel. I didn't answer, couldn't. Alexander soon joined the gathering, every gesture perfectly choreographed for our audience. He danced with socialites, whispered with politicians, smiled at admirers. But when he thought no one was watching, he leaned close to Vanessa, murmuring something that made her laugh softly against his shoulder. A private moment in a very public space. Later, I found the courage to approach him at the bar. Alexander, I said softly. He turned slightly. Carl. His voice was neutral, his expression blank. Why do you do this? I asked. The smiling, the pretending for them, only to freeze me out when we're alone? He paused, his glass hovering midway to his lips. Public displays are part of the requirement. Stop pretending they mean anything beyond that. I wanted to tell him they meant everything to me, but he'd already turned his back. Don't complicate this, he warned once more. Vanessa materialized beside him, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. You're still so tense, she whispered in his ear, loudly enough for me to hear. He didn't stop her. He never did. Near the stage, someone requested a photograph of the happy trio. Alexander positioned us effortlessly, one arm around my shoulders, his other hand resting possessively near Vanessa's waist. The camera flash immortalized our beautiful lie. Everyone smiled. Everyone believed. I turned to study his profile, and the ache returned because the world saw a love story where I saw only survival. As the gala concluded, Vanessa whispered something that made Alexander laugh. That same low, cruel sound that sliced through me every time. His father watched us leave, his expression satisfied with the perfect illusion we'd manufactured. Alexander walked beside me, composed and unreadable, the dutiful air his family demanded. In the car afterward, Silence enveloped us once more. I sat across from him, watching city lights streak past the window like fallen stars. Behind us, Vanessa's laughter seemed to echo in the space between us. I studied my reflection in the tinted glass. Half of a marriage built on obligation, half of a man still learning how to feel alive again. And though I resented the power he held over my heart, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Because sometimes the most painful love is the one that continues to hurt you, and you still find yourself unable to walk away. A month passed, maybe two. Time feels strange here, in this gilded cage. Every day looked the same. The same city lights shimmering beyond the glass wall. The same untouched place at the breakfast table. The same sound of his footsteps echoing through a silence I was finally learning to fill. I stopped waiting. I decided not to wait for him to love me. So I started waking up early, making my bed, showering, dressing like I had somewhere important to be even when I didn't, ironing my clothes, fixing my hair, looking alive. Because even if he wouldn't see me, I'd see myself. One Tuesday evening, he walked in from work. He dropped his jacket on the couch as usual. Then he stopped, turned, actually looked at me. I was standing near the kitchen island, wearing a crisp navy shirt with the sleeves rolled to my elbows, a silver watch catching the last of the evening light. I was scrolling through my phone, a small, genuine smile on my face as I confirmed my dinner plans. He stared for a beat too long before speaking. Going somewhere? I glanced up, my expression neutral. Yeah, I'm going out. He loosened his tie, his gaze sharp and unsettling. Where? Dinner. The single word made him pause. His eyes narrowed slightly. With who? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Friends. I kept my tone simple, flat. No justification, no apology. His brows drew together. At this hour? A light, effortless chuckle escaped me as I picked up my jacket. It's 7, Alexander. Not midnight. He took a slow, deliberate step closer. Since when do you have friends? This time, I met his gaze fully, my own calm and clear. Since I stopped waiting for you to talk to me. He froze. I watched it, the flicker of shock, followed by a sliver of something that looked like guilt, before it was swiftly buried under a wave of cold arrogance. Don't start with me, he muttered, a defensive edge in his voice. I'm not starting anything, I said, brushing past him toward the door. The scent of his cologne, usually so intimidating, now meant nothing. You made it clear from day one this isn't a real marriage. I'm just living accordingly. And before he could form another word, I left. The click of the door behind me sounded like freedom. Outside, the city felt alive in a way I had forgotten. Streetlights glowed like fallen stars, distant music spilled from open doors, and people laughed as if their hearts were light and unbroken. I met Ethan at a small Italian place downtown. He was a friend from college, separate from the toxic world of family business. A real friend. He was waiting by the door, and his face lit up when he saw me. Hey, you actually came, he said, pulling me into a quick, easy hug. Of course I did, I replied, a real half-smile touching my lips. You think I'd miss free food? He laughed, a warm, open sound. I like that. Come on. I already ordered drinks. We sat by the window. The air smelled of garlic and warm bread. He talked about his new job, how he'd just moved to the city, how everything still felt too fast. I listened. I laughed. For the first time in months, the sound didn't feel forced, and the smile on my face didn't feel like a lie. When he told a stupid joke, I laughed too loud and covered my mouth, feeling a blush creep up my neck. He grinned. You've got a good laugh, Carl. I shook my head, a little embarrassed. Haven't used it in a while. Then keep using it, he said, his eyes kind. It suits you. Hours slipped away without me noticing. When we finally left, the night air was cool and gentle on my skin. Ethan insisted on driving me home. The ride was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence, devoid of the tension that choked the penthouse. There was no pressure, no judgment, just ease. When he pulled up in front of the towering building, he smiled. Thanks for tonight. You were good company. You too, Ethan, I said, and I meant it. He waited, engine idling, until I was safely inside the lobby before driving away. I didn't see the figure standing in the floor-to-ceiling window high above, watching it all. But he saw me. When the elevator doors opened into the penthouse, the lights were all on. Alexander was sitting on the couch, his jacket long discarded, sleeves rolled up his forearms, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes, dark and intense, found me the moment I stepped inside. The air crackled with a silence louder than any we'd ever shared. "Did you have a good time?" His voice was low, roughened by the alcohol. I didn't stop walking. I just towed off my shoes by the entrance and headed toward the hallway. "I did, thank you, Carl." The way he said my name was different. Not a command, but something closer to a plea. It made me pause, my hand on my bedroom doorframe. I glanced back. He had stood up. He looked unraveled. "Who was that?" "A friend," I said, my tone flat. "As I told you. He dropped you off." It wasn't a question. It was an accusation laced with something raw. He was being polite. I turned to go into my room. "Don't." The word was sharp, desperate. I heard the clink of his glass hitting the coffee table and his footsteps crossing the room. He stopped a few feet behind me. "Don't walk away from me." I slowly turned to face him. The anger in his eyes was gone, replaced by a bewildered frustration. He was looking at me like a puzzle he could no longer solve. "What do you want, Alexander?" I asked, truly curious. "You have made your feelings perfectly clear for months. You get to live your life. I am now living mine. This is what you wanted." "I didn't want." He cut himself off, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, messing it. "This isn't what I meant." "Then you should have been more specific." I gave him a small, polite smile, the kind he'd always given me. "Good night." I walked into my room and closed the door, not with a slam, but with a soft, final click. On the other side, I heard a sound I had never heard from him before. A low, guttural curse, followed by the sound of something shattering against a wall. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just changed out of my clothes, the ghost of a real smile still on my lips. For the first time, the silence in my room felt peaceful. It was the sound of his control shattering, and it was the most beautiful noise I'd ever heard. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee. This in itself was not unusual. What was unusual was finding Alexander already in the kitchen, dressed for the day, 2 mugs steaming on the counter. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Good morning," he said, his voice tentative. I simply nodded, heading straight for the coffee maker. I poured my own mug, ignoring the one he had seemingly prepared for me. The silence was thick, heavy with his unspoken words. "Carl," he began, stepping into my path as I tried to move toward the balcony. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I took a slow sip of my coffee, meeting his gaze over the rim of the mug. "I have a yoga class at 10. His jaw tightened. "It's about Vanessa." I remained silent, giving him nothing. No curiosity, no pain, just a blank, waiting space. "I ended things with her," he said. The words rushed, as if he needed to get them out before he lost his nerve. He searched my face, desperately looking for a reaction. "It's over. For good." I took another sip of coffee, letting the statement hang in the air between us. I saw the hope flicker in his eyes, the desperate need for a response. Any response. Finally, I lowered my mug. "Okay." His face fell. "Okay? That's all you have to say." "What would you like me to say, Alexander?" I asked, my tone as calm as the city skyline behind him. "You told me this marriage wasn't real. My feelings for you or about your life are irrelevant. So, if you're no longer seeing her, that's your business. Not mine." The word irrelevant seemed to physically strike him. He flinched, his confident posture deflating. "It's not irrelevant. I did it for..." "Don't..." I cut him off, my voice soft but firm. "Don't do something and then try to pin the reason on me. You made your choices. I've made my peace with them." I walked around him, the scent of his expensive cologne doing nothing to stir me anymore. I felt his eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. The balcony door slid open and then shut behind me, leaving him alone in the kitchen with his untouched coffee and his crumbling pride. Days bled into one another. I filled my time. Yoga classes, long walks in the park, coffee with Ethan. I was building a life, a real one, with pieces that I had chosen for myself. One evening, I returned home earlier than expected. The penthouse was quiet, but as I walked toward my room, I heard the low murmur of a voice from his home office. The door was slightly ajar. I had no intention of eavesdropping, but the raw, strained tone of his voice made me freeze. "I know, Father. I know that now." A pause. I was a fool. A proud, stupid fool. I stood in the shadowed hallway, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. There was no pity in it, only a detached curiosity. He's slipping through my fingers," Alexander's voice cracked. "He doesn't look at me anymore. He doesn't care. I've ruined it. I've ruined everything." His father's response was a distant, tinny sound from the speakerphone, unintelligible but undoubtedly stern. "I don't know what to do." The confession was a desperate, broken thing. "You have to help me. Please, call a family dinner, a meeting, anything. I need a chance to fix this. I can't lose him." There was another pause, and then a sound that made my breath catch. A choked, ragged sob. "I love him. I think I've loved him for a while, and I was just too much of a coward to see it. Please, Father. I'm begging you. I don't want to lose my husband." I stood there for a moment longer, listening to the shaky breaths of the man who had once told me hate required too much energy. Now, love was reducing him to rubble on the floor of his office. Quietly, I turned and walked to my room. I closed the door and leaned against it, waiting to feel something. Triumph, vindication, sorrow. But all I felt was quiet. A deep, immense quiet. The war was over. He had surrendered, and I found that I no longer wanted the spoils of a battle I had never asked to fight. His tears changed nothing. His confession changed everything. And yet, it changed nothing at all. 2 days later, the call came. A family meeting. Both sides invited. His father looked proud. My parents cautious. Everyone pretending this was just another discussion. But Alexander was a mess. Eyes red, shirt wrinkled, hands shaking slightly. He didn't even wait for formalities. "I messed up," he said. "I was cold, stupid, blind. I thought I could control everything, even love. But I can't stand this silence anymore." Everyone looked at me. I didn't speak. I just folded my hands and said calmly, "I have nothing to fix." The room fell silent. Alexander looked like the air had been punched out of him. I stood up, and I left. 3 months passed. The divorce papers remained unsigned. Not out of hesitation, but because the urgency was gone. My life was no longer defined by my escape from him. I had moved out. A new apartment, a new rhythm, a new peace. Sometimes I'd still glance at the clock around the time he used to come home, but the habit was fading and the ache was gone. Until one morning, a small, cream-colored envelope slid under my door. No return address, just my initials, KC, written in the sharp, familiar handwriting I had once memorized. Inside was a photograph of the mansion's garden, now vibrant and meticulously cared for, the fountain cleaned, the flower beds bursting with color. On the back, a short note. "You once said this house never felt like home. I'm trying to change that, even if you never see it." Hey! I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't a plea, it was proof. Weeks turned into a quiet stream of updates. A message from his mother. He stopped drinking. Another from his executive assistant. He volunteers at the orphanage every Sunday now. Then one from my father. He came to the office today to apologize to me, not for you, for himself. I never replied, but the fortress I'd built around my heart began to tremble. It was raining the night I saw him again. A chance encounter downtown at a charity gala. I was leaving as he arrived, my umbrella turning inside out in the wind. Our eyes met under the glittering city lights. He looked different. The arrogance was gone. The guarded pride had vanished. In its place was a quiet, steady calm. "Carl," he said, his voice soft, almost lost in the rain. I gave a small nod. "Alexander." He hesitated, his gaze tracing my face. You look happy. I am. A faint, genuine smile touched his lips. Good. You deserve that. For a moment we just stood there, the city moving around us in a blur. Then, before I could turn to leave, he added, I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to see that I'm trying. And somehow that was enough. A month later, I found myself driving to the mansion. He wasn't expecting me. I found him in the garden, the one from the photograph, on his knees, pruning roses, soil staining his hands, his hair falling softly over his forehead. He looked up, and his breath caught. Carl, I was in the area, I said, my voice trembling only slightly. He stood quickly, wiping his hands on his trousers. You shouldn't be standing in the rain. I glanced around, taking in the life he had nurtured from the ground up. It's beautiful here. He offered a faint, vulnerable smile. I wanted it to feel like you. A soft, comfortable silence settled between us. Then I said, You've changed. He let out a shaky breath. I had to. The man you left behind. He wasn't worthy of your love. I looked at him then, truly looked. The anger, the ego, the calculated cruelty, it was all gone. In its place stood someone raw, humbled, and utterly human. He took a careful step closer, his voice low and fervent. I still love you. But if all I ever get is this moment, it will have been enough. Thank you for teaching me how to love. Even if I learned too late, something in me cracked open. Not from a place of missing him, but from finally seeing the undeniable truth. He wasn't pretending this time. I reached out, my fingers brushing against his rain-damp cheek. You didn't learn too late, I whispered. He froze, his eyes searching mine. What do you mean? A soft, sure smile curved my lips. Because I'm still here. He pulled me into his arms then, slowly, carefully, as if I were something precious and fragile. There were no tears, no desperate begging, just a profound, enveloping warmth. The rain kept falling around us, but it no longer felt cold. For the first time, it wasn't about revenge or regret. It was about a love that had been rebuilt, stronger, quieter, and real. When he finally spoke, his voice was a broken whisper against my shoulder. Will you come home? I smiled through the gentle rain, my heart full and light. I was never truly gone. You just had to find your way back to me. That night, we didn't talk about the past. We simply existed, together, healed, and whole. And perhaps that is the truest form of forgiveness. Not forgetting the pain that broke you, but choosing to stay when the other person has learned, at last, how to hold you without causing a single new wound. 6 months later, the sun was setting over the same garden where everything had once fallen apart. But now it was transformed, softer, alive, breathing. The air carried the scent of roses and recent rain, the very fragrance that had witnessed our goodbye. Alexander stood by the floral archway, adjusting his cufflinks, his hands trembling just enough to reveal the depth of his feeling. He looked at me as if I were the only soul in the universe. Carl, he said, his voice quiet but sure. You look beautiful. I smiled. You've already said that 5 times. He let out a nervous chuckle, rubbing the back of his neck. I don't want to forget a single detail. Not this time. The guests were few. Only family, true friends, and those who had witnessed us survive our darkest seasons. No press releases, no flashing cameras. Just us. When the officiant gave him a nod, Alexander drew a steadying breath and turned to face me fully. I asked you to marry me once, he began, his voice soft but clear. For all the wrong reasons. Because my father demanded it. Because it was strategically convenient. Because I was too proud to admit that I needed you. He paused, his eyes glistening under the golden hour light. I broke something precious. I broke you. And when you left, I was certain I had lost you forever. But that loss, it taught me how to love. Not with control, not with conditions, but with patience. With humility. He took my hand, his own trembling slightly in mine. So today, I'm asking you again. Not because I have to. Not because anyone expects it. But because I went to choose you. Freely, joyfully, every single day, for the rest of my life. He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. Inside lay a simple, elegant silver band. Not ostentatious, not a display of wealth. It was real. "I don't want the old vows," he whispered. His gaze locked on mine. "I want ours. Ones that actually mean something this time." I couldn't stop the tears then. They fell freely, happily. He watched me, his expression so vulnerable, as if my silence could unravel him all over again. So I stepped closer, closing the space between us. "You already have my answer." His brows furrowed in gentle confusion. "What do you mean?" I smiled through the tears, my heart feeling too full for my chest. "You said you wanted us to start over." "Well," I said, squeezing his hand, "you're already holding my hand again, aren't you?" He laughed then, a soft, relieved sound that seemed to shake loose the last remnants of his guilt. With trembling hands, he slipped the ring onto my finger. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to wait for my love again," he whispered, a sacred promise. "And I'll spend mine," I replied, my voice thick with emotion, "making sure you never forget what it feels like to be loved completely." The officiant smiled, her own eyes misty. "You may now kiss your husband." And there, under the canopy of golden light, surrounded by the very place that had once broken us, he kissed me. Not with desperation, but with gentleness, with certainty, with a love that was finally undeniably real. No father's orders, no broken promises, just two men who had, against all odds, learned what love truly is, chosen, not forced. As our small circle of loved ones cheered softly, Alexander leaned his forehead against mine. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion, "for giving me another chance to love you right." I smiled, my heart so full it felt like a new beginning. "You didn't just get another chance, Alex. You became the man I was always waiting for." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of gold and lavender. And for the first time, our story didn't end with an ache. It ended with a quiet, unshakable peace. Because love, when it is real and fought for, always finds its way home.